How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the first of 3 interview previews leading up to my new course, Discover Game Design. Today, we hear from Ryan Davis, a Construct 2 developer who is responsible for making Adventure Lamp, a platforming game about losing your hat. You can check the game out in the description below, and I hope you enjoy the interview. Hey,
Yeah.
how are you?
Hey. Good. How
Thank
are
you so
you
much for
doing?
doing this.
Yeah, no problem. I thought I can endlessly delay this, or I could just say, "Hey, I'm available now."
I hope I can make this as painless as possible.
Oh, no, that's fine. I like to talk.
Awesome. And I'm really excited to hear about your game. And actually, it's pretty great because I only know about your game. I don't know enough about your background. So this will be really in informational to me as well.
Yeah,
Like,
cool.
and I'm kind of like, since this was kind of impromptu, I'm gonna pull together questions that I've asked before.
Yeah.
So hopefully this will be
That was
more.
actually one of my concerns when I said tonight. I thought, "Ooh, you may not have questions." I didn't want to impose. I've just done it before where I artificially say, "How about tomorrow or this weekend?" And it just like for no reason drags things off into eternity. So
It sure does, and I really appreciate you for doing this. And first, let me say I've played 1,000 Construct 2 games, and I really love your game. So
thanks.
let me say that I think your game is incredibly polished. So why don't we start off with the very first basic question, which is how did you get started with game development?
Well, I started making games when I was about 13.
Mhm.
My dad found Game Maker. I don't know how, but he showed up one day with a burned CD, and it had Game Maker and a bunch of art assets on it. And it was like, a thousand hurdles just dropped. And I was a bored 13-year-old who liked to make things in general and actually lived overseas. So I had like nothing to do, nowhere to go, and a computer and a lot of time. So um, I fell in love with making things move around on the screen, which is probably why I have a polish focus. I really like movement.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it was a long, windy path, but basically, as time went on, I just couldn't get away from it. I thought I wanted to do other things, and I do other things. I do a lot of things, but man, games really just tugged me in. So a few years ago, I think 2012, I finally decided to just stop calling it a hobby and take it seriously.
And now it's your full-time job.
No, I have a full-time job and a crazy hours part-time job. During grad school, game development was the full-time job. It
Right.
shifted since, and so now it's mornings, nights, weekends, vacation days.
See, that's amazing to me. It's amazing because you have all these other things going on, yet you still finished your game. You know,
Yeah,
like it's
it's
not
amazing
easy.
to me too. Like when I hit that publish button, it was like, this is crazy. This doesn't happen nearly often enough, and it's
Yeah, it feels amazing, right?
yeah, it was very what's the word? It really did a good thing for my spirit because I've been doing it a long time and there's such a long trail of half finished and broken things behind me. So it's good to have something that is very clearly like a progress point. I mean, I have lots of finished stuff, but nothing quite as legitimate, I think.
Does it make you want to make smaller games and release them quicker? Or
Actually, yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm like, hey, I
yeah.
need a break. I need to. I actually had something that was a half finished game. Like it was neat and it just didn't like fit anywhere, so I stopped. But
Mhm.
I realized all it needs is better meta hooks, and then I'll just throw it up on itch or Steam, probably for a low price because it's not quite as in depth as even Adventure Lamp, which is still kind of a short game. But I think it's worth having out there. It's done, it's nice, and people will enjoy it, and it's not doing any good on my hard drive.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it actually. So you started with Game Maker. I actually started with ActionScript 2.0, if you can believe it or not.
Mm. I'm
Back when
jealous actually, because Flash was all like I looked at Flash Dev and I was like, crap, they can actually do things. Like they can sell stuff, they go on web portals, and here I am stuck on like the Game Maker sandbox.
Oh, I know. For a very long time, that was all you were able to do was make a Flash game or nothing at all. And then the Game Maker Sandbox, I remember that so well. And I got Game Maker 8 also on a burned CD. So it was
Mm. I
very
started
bootleg.
with Game Maker 5.2, I think, back when Mark Overmars was still making it.
Yeah, when it really first started.
Yeah, actually now I'm all the, the super indies, well not all of them. Many of the super indies like Cactus and oh what's his name? He made Towerfall. Um
I don't know his name.
yeah, this circle of
But I know what game
people,
you're
like
talking about.
they were my peers. I
Mhm.
talked to some. I had a personal message from Cactus because I asked him a question about shooters, vertical shooters. What are they called? Shmups. Because he's
Right.
very good at them.
Mhm.
And he, took some time to answer my question back when we were all teenagers. So yeah, it's
So Flash kind of created this bubble for people who didn't want to go the Flash route,
yeah.
and they created the Game Maker bubble, and then now that's completely exploded, and Flash is dead. It's kind of funny how that worked out that way.
Yeah,
So
so I jumped ship to Construct 2, just a short thing there. When the Game Maker thing changed over to Studio and the price jumped
yeah,
very
completely jumped.
significantly. Yeah,
It did.
so I just was like, yeah, maybe it's time to try something new. And actually, Construct 2 helped me focus on like just finishing games because it's harder to get really like systemy.
Hmm.
I mean, you can do it, but it doesn't have GML, which to people who do like C languages is it's still really clunky, but you can still get lost in like making, I don't know, level generators and physics engines and stuff.
Right. That is the one thing. I mean, I started with ActionScript. I moved to Multimedia Fusion 2,
Mm-hmm.
and then I discovered Game Maker. And I loved Game Maker. When they made the switch to Studio, I went to Construct 2. Or no, sorry, I went to Construct Classic. I
Mm-hmm.
did Construct Classic for a little while, and then I stopped doing games altogether. And then when I came back, I did some Game Maker Studio. And I've been all around doing those kind of engines. But you're exactly right, where the whole Game Maker language and Game Maker is great, but it kind of gets you lost in the engine versus the finished
Yeah, you got to
product.
stay focused, and I wasn't good at that. So Construct 2 was sort of my not crutch. It was my vehicle to like stopping that the endless cycle and just making stuff. I decided that I was just going to use whatever behaviors and plugins were already there and use it however it wanted me to use it. And I could find interesting things inside of those. And lo and behold, there's tons of interesting stuff.
Yeah, there is. And I think this is one of the questions I ask everybody who's made a game with Construct 2. Do you ever feel there's any limitation? Because I think that there's this weird misconception about
Mm,
Construct
hmm
2 not being powerful enough to make your
There,
game.
okay, there are some.
Mhm.
Just like every, platform has its own weird limitations. Construct's limitations are, let's see, the first one that jumps to mind is the weirdness that is HTML5 web tech stuff.
Sure.
So anytime you have to wrap your code inside some service that may or may not be functioning today,
Mhm.
you're gonna have problems. So, like the first month of release for Adventurelamp was hunting a weird memory leak that I had nothing to do with, and
Oh,
there
that's
was
unfortunate.
a very wonderful, much more skilled person than I who helped me out immensely trying to find that because I didn't know what I was doing, and it was kind of like I kind of wanted to throw my hands up in the air and say it's not my fault.
Right.
I,
Right.
I did figure it out, but it really was it was one of those weirdnesses that had to do with web tech and Node no, it's NWJS now and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that's just a part of it. And you're sort of at the mercy of that. So like PlayStation's just not an option. Xbox is suddenly an option. Pro tip,
Is it?
yeah.
Wow.
It Adventurelamp just runs on an Xbox. So
That's awesome.
here's
Wow.
a little tip off. Join the dev program, which is free, and
I have to look at that up after this.
Apparently Construct 2 games just run on it amazingly. Like WebGL is perfect, everything. So like the Xbox controller plug or the gamepad plugin,
Yeah.
perfect. No problems. So
Wow.
yeah. So
That's a
that's
surprise.
great. But sometimes that kind of stuff just doesn't work and there's no solution. So that's one of the issues.
Mhm.
And it's worth knowing. But it doesn't stop you cold. Steam is totally an option. PC, Mac, Linux, Xbox, and Wii U more or less, but you have to design for it because the hardware's got some specific issues.
Right. So
But
it's more or less the limitations come after the fact, almost,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and it's not about making games. If you want to make games, you can totally make games with very few um, with reasonable expectations on what's possible in a 2D engine.
Mhm.
Game Maker is not more powerful in regards to the 2D stuff. Actually, I complained for years about Game Maker's problems. Yeah,
And then all of a sudden you switch.
yeah, and it's really like, hey, it's never been possible to do everything you want. Sorry.
Would you ever switch again? Would you ever go back? Just because? I mean, for me, I
I've
find
got
it
this
fun.
I've got this weird hang up about it. Like there was a Humble bundle that, I basically could have gotten it for free and I didn't for whatever reason. It was like showing up at an ex's door. I don't know. I can. I'm
Yeah,
not
of
sure if I
course.
will. Maybe. I'm actually kind of eyeing Unity because it seems like there are more options there. But we all like have this endless existential angst about if we're using the right tech or not. And
I
in the end, that
know.
gets in the
I
way of
know.
making games.
It exactly. And Game Maker Studio 2 this month, or should be coming out this month, from what I've seen.
Huh.
Which
Interesting.
will, I think what they're doing is they're blending Unity into Game Maker. So like all the
Weird.
Unity features, yeah, it's gonna be weird, and who knows if it'll be a hit or not.
Yeah,
But
that's fascinating. I'll have to keep an eye on that. I've been sort of out of that loop, probably because every time I hear news about it, I cringe.
yeah, yeah, it does that to
Like getting
you.
an email about your ex getting a baby or something like, oh, why'd you tell me that? I don't need to know this.
Thanks for the information.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, did I need to know that? I think for what I've encountered, so many people are so bogged down by the fact that Construct 2 doesn't have its own language, and I think that that's a mistake.
Mm.
I think the fact that C2 does not have its own language is a huge plus. I
Yeah,
wish we
it's
could.
it's a perk. It's not like you don't have to learn a dialect, right? You just
Yeah,
have to learn programming concepts, and those are they're universal concepts for the most part. There are
right.
weird. There's always weird things that each engine does. Like I had to learn the order of operations in Construct 2. Things that I took for granted from GameMaker did not translate over. Stuff like picking.
That's
There are
true.
times when I just want to be like, I want to just throw the ID in a variable and then pull that variable later and just say, do this. I don't care what object it is or if it's going to throw an error or what. Like, trust me, I can do this. And the game and Construct 2 is like, no, you need to tell me what kind of object it is.
That's so
Ah,
funny. It's so
you know.
funny. I sometimes wish there were Construct 2 jokes in Construct 2 because that just
So,
is so funny.
there are things and it's stuff you learn to work around. So, um, yes, I would love to be able to throw any data in any variable and pull it up at any time, but that does throw runtime errors, game crashing bugs, and I don't have to live with that quite as much. So,
Right.
um,
Exactly. It's almost like you don't have time for that. You just want to make the game.
yeah,
That's
and so
kind
what
of the
I
big
end up,
drawback.
yeah, so what I end up doing is just making games that are less like fancy switching stuff in and out, and I just think, okay, what's a simple thing that I can do that would be fun? And you know what? In the end, it ends up being months of work anyway. So um,
Right.
there's no point in getting lost in fun systems. Fun
So
systems are great for programmers, not for gamers.
exactly. And I think that's kind of the biggest I mean, we talked about the misconception with Construct 2. I think that's the biggest misconception when you go into learning how to make a game is you kind of get stuck in the learning phase. And
Yeah,
you need some help to just kind of really get to the finished phase where you made the game, because that's what really, I don't know, it
yeah.
makes you feel more accomplished, it makes you feel better. And
And you
um
can't practice finishing if you've never finished anything.
exactly. And
And
it's
just like anything else, it takes several tries to get even mediocre at finishing. So
and luckily with
keep
our
doing it.
landscape, when we started doing this, when we were younger, it was there were really any community to post to. And now if you make if you spend an hour on a game, you can post it on Twitter, you can post it on TIG Source or
Hmm.
wherever, and you can have feedback in a minute. And
Yeah,
that feedback
yeah, you
is
can.
could shape your entire game, and who knows, it
Hmm.
so I think that's pretty interesting. So my next question for you is, how much pre-planning went into Adventureland? Also, where did the idea come from?
Oh, fascinating. Okay, actually, Adventurelamp has way more pre-production stuff than anything else I've ever done, and there's
Wow.
a reason for that. So it was a Ludum Dare entry
Hmm.
for anyone who doesn't know. It's a game jam, 48 hours. Um, and the theme was unconventional weapon. So yeah,
Now it
right.
makes sense.
So I don't know where it came from, but I wanted to do a platformer, and I the little box I had ended up with a hat on. And I don't remember how, but I really like juice, like juicy, polishy effects, and I do it almost immediately, even if I've got
Right.
black boxes on the screen. So this black box had squash and stretch, probably because I'd seen a lot of Zach Bell gifs. He
The
does a
ink game.
lot of squash and stretch,
Yeah, sure.
and it
Absolutely.
must have just sunk into my brain. Now it's like everything I do is squash and stretch. But so I had that and this hat that I thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun if it like did a little bit of a drag behind? I don't know how familiar everyone is with this, but like you just nudge something 20-30% toward the goal every step, and what it does is it just drags
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've
until,
done it with my camera follows.
oh man, I do it on everything, just everywhere. And it's actually, I just did a talk about this at the Game Developer Expo in Ohio, and I'll be posting a recorded version on my Twitter. But
That'd be awesome.
anyway, you layer this stuff together and it looks great. So I just do it immediately, so I don't have
Mhm.
to spend forever on it. So I had this thing dragging behind this little box, and I thought, it's kind of falling off his head. That's funny. What would happen if it got too far? And then I thought, well, Construct 2 has this physics plugin, which I just use everywhere. Like I can't help myself. And I was like, oh, I'll just make it a physics object. And there was this beautiful moment where I ran it I just hit run, jumped, and the hat got a little bit too far off the head and fell because it was a physics object and flopped around. And it
And
was
then it
the
just hit you.
funniest thing. And I thought, I gotta keep this. And what if I could throw it? And then, it just kind of went from there.
Wow. So did you have
So
a finished product by the time the jam was over?
yeah, I was gonna say you could still play it, but Dropbox just changed its terms, so it probably would throw you a 404. But
Oh,
anyway, um, it got 17th overall, which is great,
that
like
is great.
unbelievable. Yeah, and that was kind of a sign, right? Like, oh, maybe this is worth something.
What year was that? Since I do not
This
know.
was, let's see, um, lost in time. 2015, year and a half ago.
Okay.
So the game
So you
took about a year to make. Um,
wow.
and actually, so they're right as Ludum Dare's judging rounds had ended, and I figured out how I'd placed. I decided I about that time I'd gotten a call from Nintendo because
Mhm.
I'd submitted a developer application, months had gone by, and finally I'd gotten a call, which was really cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah, wow. Um, and let's see. Oh yeah, so I had poked around on their little developer website for a little while, and I can't speak much of that, but I'd seen about the dev kit for the Wii U, and I'd seen prices and stuff, and it was, we all have small budgets. My
Right.
budget had never seen a number bigger than like $100, so anything's gonna be expensive. So I had to sit down with my wife and hash it out and what are we willing to invest. And so I decided to take this seriously and get a dev kit. So while waiting on the dev kit, like weeks, 2, 3 weeks, I think, I decided, because I'd heard that Wii U was something Construct 2 games didn't always run well on, to just not make anything more and spend that time on planning, because I can't not work on it. If I don't work on it, then it's gonna, disappear on me. But
True.
I didn't want to put in a feature that would break everything, right?
Yeah, that would be bad.
So anyway, this is long-winded, but I spent those 2 or 3 weeks kind of like researching how that game company does their pre-production, and trying to build like arcs, and doing color palettes and thinking about the world a bit. And um, I've never done anything like that. And honestly, it would be hard to do it again without an external thing like a dev kit coming in. But it was so useful, and it really informed everything else, gave it a lot of structure. So I would recommend it. But
Wow, that's actually pretty cool. I've never even
yeah,
considered it.
really
Wow.
cool. I still have a sketchbook that's actually, I filled the sketchbook front and back with stuff. It's a real treasure now.
So you can draw, like that's something that you are good with
Yeah,
doing?
I, among other things, I have an art degree, and um, it's not something like I don't do. Oh, like Owlboy came out today, and I see I forget his name, the
Oh,
artist on it. I see his work, and I just like, oh, I can't.
yeah. I mean,
But
I've seen his work. Oh man.
but I'm really good
Ooh.
at gestural sketching, and so I sketched out a lot of the world ideas, and they sort of like percolated for a while, and then
Hmm.
turned into the assets for the game. Um, a
I
lot of
mean,
concept stuff that didn't end up being like what you actually see.
I love it. And I love that it wasn't pixel art because that's kind of what I focus on. And so when
Yeah,
I saw a game that wasn't pixelated in Construct 2, I was like, whoa. And
I
it
don't
looks
know
so
how
good.
it happened. Like, I love pixel art, and when I started making games, I used Paint and Game Maker's
Game Maker's
little
editor.
tool thing. And that was
Yeah,
my those were my tools
right.
for a long time. I actually did fairly good at it for what it was.
If I was to ever like suggest a feature over and over and over again to
Oh
the guys
man.
at Construct 2, it would be to get some kind of editor going
Oh my gosh.
like
Yeah.
Game Maker. It seems like it's a no-brainer.
It's from like the early 2000s, and it hasn't
It,
changed almost at all since
and
probably
yeah,
6 or
and
7.
it seems like that would be. I mean, so since there is no drawing editor, you're using Photoshop, I'm assuming, or
No,
Illustrator.
I'm using Inkscape.
Wow,
I can't
Inkscape.
remember exactly why, but I think what happened was Construct. Oh, I know now. I got Construct 2, and the website kind of pushed me toward Vector, because they use a lot of vectory things on the Sierra website. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh, maybe a vector editor. And I just downloaded Inkscape and started just kind of using it. And, you just get used to your tools, right?
Yeah,
So uh, now, like, it's really hard to go back. Um, yeah, I
I
just
can
really like
imagine.
vectors.
I actually really like Inkscape. I back when Game Maker was first a thing, I was using GIMP, and GIMP was just
Hmm.
always taking over my computer. I'd always
Yeah.
have like every
I know
file
people
open up
love
in
GIMP,
GIMP.
but it drives me nuts.
Oh, it does drive me nuts too. So Inkscape was always like my saving grace, and I would use Inkscape for a while, and then I realized that I just couldn't draw, and I was like, you know what,
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop drawing and focus on making the games. So let me ask you this: were you working any part-time, full-time jobs when this was happening last year?
Yeah, I
Because
have
what
I
would like
started
your schedule be?
I
You know?
started my career job May 2015. So
Okay, so not too
actually,
long ago.
right when Adventureland's big stuff, like big development started. Same time, actually. It's really funny. Um, and I'm not sure yet about how much I want to disclose about it, because I try to keep them separate. But I work with in a mental health field all
Mhm.
day, and then
So something completely unrelated to game design.
yeah, actually,
Yeah.
which is cool. They
Yeah, it gives
inform
you a little
each
bit of
other.
a break.
Yeah, and actually, it's a great way to switch gears, because when you're in mental health, it can consume your life because
Oh, sure.
anytime you're helping people, like boundaries can get really weird and you need to pull away from it. So I just like, it's like a hard gear switch where I go and
Yeah.
suddenly I'm doing
It
something
really
else.
sounds like it because I could only imagine coming home from that kind of job and kind of being drained. And then what would you do?
Mhm.
Go. So
So
is that kind of like the process? You'd go home and then
yeah,
work on the game?
it cuts in and out. Like I don't know why, but lately it's been hard. Around launch of Adventureland, I was getting up every day at 7. I go to work at around 10, so I had this time. I worked hard. I hit it hard, and then I would come home from work and spend some time with my wife and have dinner, and then like an hour and a half or so of whatever boxes I could check, and
Yeah.
then kind of all weekend would be like either very much, with my wife, doing something with her, recharging, or right back to work. Very little time is wasted,
That's actually
actually,
pretty good
man.
because one of my questions was, have you ever experienced burnout? And if so, what is your solution to it?
Launch.
It's
I actually planned for post-launch depression because
almost
it's
inevitable.
almost guaranteed. Like even if it's just for a week of going, oh man, like it's done, and for whatever reason, like not having a finish line to pound toward for every second is, any kind of high, emotional high where you're really into something, the day after can be kind of slumpy, So even if like it's a great launch, I plan for time after that where I'm like, I'm not getting anything done.
Right.
I'm gonna try, like I'm gonna show up. I've got a little thing above my desk actually says show up every day. I really try to. Like when you're your own boss, you have to go to work, right? If you don't go to work, you're not going to get any work done.
Right. Who's going to do it if it's not you?
Yeah, right. You're not going to shove it off to the next guy over.
Exactly.
He won't
There
do
is
it for
nobody
you.
else. That's
Um,
hilarious.
yeah. So, um, oh, I just got lost there. So, burnout. It's hit me hard a few times. But I've got a great support system and I love to make things. And if I'm not making things, I start going stir crazy. So I think sometimes I take breaks from that and I start making like, I have a pottery studio. Um,
Oh, wow.
Actually, yeah, I really fell in love with pottery in college. So I, I couldn't not. Um, and I just get my hands in some clay or I don't know. I make something silly with sticks in the yard or something like. I
I
just
think
have to
it's
be
great.
generating.
Every game developer I've talked to, they all have something else that is just completely different. I
Yeah,
mean,
you gotta.
some things will be close. Like some people will be like, I make music, but I do it for a full ensemble. But like,
Hmm.
it's wow, pottery. I mean, that's crazy. It's awesome too.
There's
It's
something really great about. It's very mindful and meditative, and it's hard to say that without sounding like it's like a religious thing. It's not. It's like your body is focused on being still,
right. I'm all
and
about. I love mindfulness, and actually, that's something I've been talking a lot about recently. So no, you're right on the money for me.
yeah, and when you're, focused on something that's very brain centered, it's nice to get into something that's very body centered. It just helps balance things. And then in that place where you can't be distracted and you can't um, make any sudden movements or anything like that, your creative juices are just spinning around in a way that you can't, it's the shower thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. You just need to get away from it. If you have a problem, then you come back an
Yeah.
hour later, and the problem
So
solves
I try
itself.
to take care of myself by doing things that fill me up. When I go on vacations, um, I have this rule. We will do nothing that drains,
That's a great rule.
even
That
if
means you have a
it's
fun
what you're
vacation.
supposed to do. Like, oh, we're in Paris, we have to get all the way to the top of the Eiffel Tower. Well, you know what? If I'm gonna leave like an empty shell, it's not worth it, and I'm not doing it.
Right. Then you don't enjoy yourself as much. And I feel like a lot of game development starts because you're enjoying yourself, not
Hmm.
because it's a full-time job that you
Yeah,
have to do to make a paycheck.
Adventureland's core tenant is joy.
Right.
if it doesn't have joy, it is not. It did not make it into the game. Like I tried to rip it out because it it needs it needs to just breathe the joy of a hat flopping off your head and getting blown away by the wind. So
Yeah.
I actually designed away from like people were saying, "Ah, Super Meat Boy," and it's got a bit of that. But I designed away from rage quits because I didn't think that it meshed well with the narrative, the theming, the character.
No,
It's
it's so
about
simple.
it's about happy clumsiness.
I love it. That's it for the interview preview. I hope you enjoyed listening. The full interview will be released alongside Discover Game Design. If you haven't already checked it out, go to discovergamedesign.com to read the free ebook and access the game loop formula. See you next time.